Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Optimal Championship League. We are here with a losers bracket best of 5 here in playoffs. It's OE Infinity versus Happy to Be here. And I gotta say, Alls, this is going to be an interesting one because we watched a little bit about both of these teams last week. So we get a bit of a taste of what they are going to look like here. But this specific matchup is one that I really don't have a clue about. What are their relative power levels in your eyes?
Well, I really haven't seen a lot of Happy to Be Here that's to dislike. They've done pretty well. I mean, the 3-0 last night was rough, but we saw it. Like, we saw that they had it in them. They just couldn't follow through. OE Infinity's been a bit all over the place. Of course, watching such a rough game 4 to end it out it doesn't exactly help my opinion of them, but I think that both of these teams are pretty evenly matched, so I think we're going to see a very, very well balanced game here, which you might hate me for this, but might mean we're going to a best of 5 and hitting that 5th game.
Yeah, I really hope that is not the case, given that we are starting relatively late on into the night for me on the East Coast. But hey, it is all for the love of the game. And I think that these two teams, like you said, are going to be competitive with one another. Obviously, we saw OE Infinity's sister team be the one at 3-0, happy to be here there in the winners bracket. OE Lemons moving on, and we'll hopefully be covering them in the future. But right now, OE Infinity, they were not so lucky. They dropped a series 3-1. They are now down here. And now this is going to be the test, right? Which one is definitively the better of the two optimal esports teams?
Well, I mean, I think that was pretty clear. OE Lemons has looked very clean in every game that we have casted so
Mm,
far. They've looked, I'm not going to say unbeatable. We haven't seen them face off against Ragnarok, who is also up there as one of, I think, the stronger teams in the league, but they certainly look good, and I think that they have a chance to go deep. I think that both of these teams, I don't want to say they've earned their place in the second chance bracket, but it definitely feels like they're going to need to push very hard to match back up to OE Lemon.
yeah, I don't know if earning their place by just losing a series is the best way to explain it. Maybe it's that they're burning their place in their winners bracket.
There you go. That might be a little bit better. All that speculation aside, we are getting a little deep into draft, and I'm surprised at the early Aatrox pickup here.
Yeah, this isn't the World's 2022 patch, guys, but happy to be here. They prioritized this before for Pride Stalker, so it coming through is not super surprising. It is maybe a little bit disappointing as they are clearly moving towards their comfort picks first rather than really looking to what's in the meta. Although that being said, their bans are a little bit more responsive to what OE Infinity specializes in. I like the fact they also are going to hit that Zio away. I think that champion is just obscenely strong right now, especially
Mhm.
into any amount of engage. But the Zillion Fiora, that's definitely just going to be knocking out the stuff that the top laner and the supports want to go for. Or, Zillion, you got that flex mid if you want to play on that Bjergsen cosplay.
Yeah, you can't kill Zillion, but at the end of the day, he stops doing damage around level 13.
Mm.
So, not the most useful mid laner if these games are going to go late. And we did see with Happy to Be Here last weekend that their games did have a tendency to go kind of long. They were getting into the
Yep.
30, 35-minute range, and at that point, you might want to pick something with a bit more late game.
And that's why I'm a little bit confused about the Aatrox because I was never really convinced that Pride Stalker NA was a great solo top laner. I think that he was permanently weak sided and kind of rightfully so. Whenever they had a lot of carry burden put onto them, I don't think that they really utilized their strengths correctly. And Aatrox is a champion that really wants to snowball more than they actually scale up. The Felios, it makes a little bit more sense given the fact that Happy to Be Here is looking to propel stuff for that late game. And the Nautilus will be a really good brick wall to stop people from getting onto this relatively immobile AD carry.
Yeah, it is a good pick. However, into the Sivir. Your hook's all well and good. Your depth charge is all well and good. But if she lands that spell shield on the one that matters, she's gonna get out just clean.
Happy to be here. Missing a ban. Not really sure why that is the case. I don't believe that they have an e-sub. We may see a clarification of that inside of the chat here, and we'll get that to you when we know what's going on. But for the time being, I want to talk a little bit about this Pantheon coming through for OE Infinity. I don't think that that's a champion where OE Infinity wants the game to go long on either, but I think they're going to do a really good job acting kind of as an anti-carry, jumping down onto the Aphelios if they get a flank position, but also during the laning phase, with this most likely going top side of the map, I think the Aatrox is going to struggle up there.
Uh, they have chosen to ban Ari here for that fourth ban.
They were choosing to ban nothing, but luckily OE Infinity are honorable, and they tell them, no, 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 take a ban, take a ban. And so, yeah, the Ari is going to be what's knocked away. Kind of an interesting choice. I think that's like one that is done without a whole lot of time determination. We'll be interested to see how that shakes the draft up, though, as they're going to ban another mid laner with that Victor also knocked away. Meanwhile, Infinity, they're going to target towards that jungle, and I think that's a really good call, especially given the fact that Jarvan the Fourth is still in his reign of terror, not really hit super hard at this point in time. Neither is that Sejuani, so both are banned out.
Yeah, this is a lot of good priority picks taken away. Well, priority in terms of what's left. I am, as you mentioned before, still surprised that Pride Stalker is getting the pride of being Red 1 here. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll have to see if that's worth it. And what they're going to do with the very limited jungle pool, they're hovering this Kayn for Mr. Ken, and that's not one we see very much.
I do think that Kane has unbound potential even in the competitive play setting. I think that his invades are very creative and oftentimes catch even the most coordinated teams off guard. The problem is, I don't know to what extent Happy to Be here has shown that they're really capable on this champion. I believe Mystic Ken went for this in the last best of 5 series as well, and that was not a victorious game as they were in fact 3-0'd. So maybe they'll be able to bring it out here and actually do something a little bit more effective. There's plenty of champions that you kind of want to dive onto and really disrupt. That Sivir in particular, the Renata Glask, also a really good target now that that's picked
Mhm.
up by Infinity. But yeah, there's some amount of flexibility that will be had whether or not to go red or blue Kane. But right now, my concern is that I don't know if either one is strictly optimal for Happy to Be here side.
No, I think there's already plenty of CC in terms of Aatrox and Nautilus, and I don't think Blue Cane brings anything to the table when you're already building a pretty good front-to-back comp here. So we'll have to see how it's piloted by Mr. Ken. It is technically possible that it could go to Yoshi Miner if they're completely out of their mind. Could go in the mid lane. We've seen that before. Not so often recently, but it is possible if they feel like that's a better matchup into the Syndra and they want something else in the jungle.
I don't imagine that Kane is at all playable into Syndra, but a person can dream alls. That Cho'Gath, actually very interesting to come out here at the very end because that does provide that flex potential still. You can have Cho'Gath jungle. I've seen Aatrox jungle as well. But most likely this is going to be Cho mid with the Kane jungle and the Aatrox top for Happy to Be here.
Yeah, you know what I wouldn't hate here is put the Cho'Gath on the weak side because Cho'Gath can play safe. Cho'Gath doesn't care. Cho'Gath is healthy enough that he can just do whatever he wants on the top side and be fine. Put the Aatrox mid lane. Have it more aggressive, somewhere where it can get some more jungle help. Let it snowball quickly. It's not as strong as it was back in Worlds 2022, but it's still a good champ if it can get ahead. It still does a lot of damage, still is very hard to kill with that ultimate popped. So if you can get that ahead with the Kayn ganking repeatedly, that could be a snowball potential here.
And one worry is the fact that Aatrox is probably going to fare far worse into a Syndra than a Cho'Gath does. Cho'Gath, with his Rupture, has the ability to farm relatively far back and
This is true.
control waves, I think, a little bit more preferably than Aatrox can. Most likely, what we're going to be seeing, if it is the case that they want the Aatrox to be a focal point of the team, is that Kane's just going to path top a bunch. That's certainly doable. Pantheon isn't a champion with great escape potential, right? This isn't something like a Wukong top that could have been potentially flexed, but as we're seeing Pato lock it in, definitely is not going to be the case for OE Infinity. So with that in mind, I think that maybe the hypermobility of the Kayn will actually allow for them to focus on side lanes a little bit more than what some of these other junglers can do. And perhaps that's where the value of this champion is going to lie.
Yeah, if Kayn is hypermobile with the ability to just wander through walls, maybe not as broken as on release when he could take Predator and go from base to base in 10 seconds, but he's still very, very fast and can come from some weird angles. Makes it really hard for Pantheon and Syndra to ward up, so I can definitely see that here. I still think there were better options in the jungle, but we'll
Mhm.
have to see if Mr. Ken can pull it out here. All
I
things are
think that
possible,
right
though.
now Yeah, I think that right now the Kane is kind of in a position where I'm not going to flame it too hard. I think that it is a very logical choice, but is it the best? Not really. It hasn't been the best choice for a very long time, unfortunately, in that role. Neither is this Cho'Gath mid, honestly. I love Cho'Gath right now. I think that it's incredibly strong, but the fact that you're using this as your counter pick and then opting it into a mid lane ranged matchup just doesn't sit right with me. It feels like, once again, Happy to Be Here is struggling with their ability to draft on red side, which is something that I believe we noted in the last best of 5 with him as well.
Yeah, we definitely did. They seem to definitely prefer blue in terms of their choices and not really plan for the way that counterpicks work on red side. We spent a lot of time on the top half of the map, though. How about we talk about this bot lane, which has basically gone unnoticed? Sivir Renata into Aphelios Nautilus.
I think the reason it's gone kind of unnoticed is because this is probably going to be a relatively boring bot lane. Renata Glask is a really good option for OE Infinity. I'm glad it came out in the second phase. This is a pick that is very much geared towards anti-dive. A lot of the champions that Happy to Be Here want to utilize to disrupt the Sivir early will now kind of be walled out from doing so, as long as Blue Caboose can land those handshakes and can keep the Nautilus and such repelled. Maybe even get a few revives off with the utilization of that bailout onto Sivir. Yeah, Silver is kind of the poster child of a long-ish range AD carry that's just very, very safe. Aphelios will be able to poke a little bit as long as they have Calibrum up, but that's about the extent to which they're going to be able to meaningfully affect this lane without jungle pressure. And I think that, as I said before, Kane is mostly a pick geared towards helping this Aatrox shore up the matchup versus the Pantheon top. If we do see them come bot, I'm afraid that Tim on this Wukong is just going to rotate over, and we know that the Monkey Man is one of the best counter gankers in the entire league.
Oh, absolutely. But that raises the question, if this spot lane is going to be so boring, could we see this Nautilus unhooked to be able to roam level 3, level 4, level 5, and start affecting elsewhere on the map, getting vision for the Kane, potentially showing up in the mid lane to help out the Cho'Gath at all, just making his presence felt even if the Aphelios doesn't need him?
Yeah, that's conceivably actually the optimal option for Happy to Be Here, because you aren't going to be doing a whole lot versus the Renata Sivir. Renata is going to struggle to roam with as much efficacy as a Nautilus does, and you're up against a relatively immobile mage there in the mid lane. OE Infinity with Izzo on the Syndra is probably going to just have to play pretty respectfully. That might actually buy the breathing space for Cho'Gath to really make their own in the mid lane. And then, yeah, if you see them fully walk with the Kane on some of the invades that Kane is known for, I think that, like, the few times we've seen Kane in high level competitive play, they're mostly an invade bot to a degree. That could really help ensure that Tim can't push back, can't get quite as much value on return cross map jungle calls and stuff like that. It also is going to cut down on Pata's early game ability. That's a really good call, Aulz, and I think it's probably what we hope to at least see out of Red Squad.
Well, we'll have to see. We've got about 90 seconds left until we get into game, so we're going to go into a short break to get everything set up on our end. But when we come back, game one of this losers bracket best of 5 to determine which of these teams stays on the edge and which of them is going home, the first eliminated from the OCL Season 4 playoffs. We're going to have the answers right here, so don't go anywhere.
Hello, friends, and welcome back. We got Optimal Esports Infinity versus Happy to be here for game number 1 of this loser bracket elimination series in Aulz. I cannot be more excited because we've seen a little bit about both of these teams, but I want to see them take to the Rift and get a full feeling of what this series is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a lot of fun here for both teams. I think we've got some spicy team comps, we've got some fun to be had, and these are both teams that have kind of struggled to get foot under themselves here, so it'll be nice to see potentially one of them actually stepping up, getting a good clean win, and maybe finding some momentum for a change of pace.
Yeah, and I don't think that either of these teams are incapable of performing well, especially if they make it through this series and get deeper on into the bracket alls. I believe that they have the ability to bounce back. It's just a matter of kind of getting this series as a ramp to get that momentum necessary to feel good about yourselves. Feels like you could take some games off of the teams that have so far eliminated you or that you have yet to face. Looks like for the time being, we're going to be seeing a double bot side start, although it's not going to be on either of the buffs, actually. It's Wolves for Kayn, and it looks like it's going to be Raptors for Wukong.
Yeah, and interestingly, this is going to be spotted out by OEI. They did get a deep ward onto the dogs at the start of the game, which means that they're going to know that Kayn's doing a little bit of an unusual start. They're going to be able to track him off that buff, and they're going to have some pretty safe time in these lanes. No worry about an early gank when you know where he is.
We were expecting a bot side start for the Kayn, and we need them to go up there and shore up Pride Soccer NA, get this Aatrox ahead early. Pata is going to want to put as much pressure on as possible, probably get a bounce back shove going relatively soon so that they will be in safe territory once it is the case that the Kayn will be able to robe up after the full clear.
Yeah, Pata already hard shoving pretty fast here, has the first wave fully defeated, has already hit level 2, so we'll be able to push Pride Stalker back and get that bounce here pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I do want to keep an eye on how the Pantheon decides to play this lane out. I think that there's several different ways that you can kind of whittle down the health of Pride Soccer NA before going for the all-in. Are you going to be using your full stacks off your passive early on, or are you mostly just going for autos, just going for some traditional trades? The question, though, needs to be answered later, because right now we got a gank bot. Robin getting jumped on by Mystic Ken. The Kayn just doesn't have the damage right now, though, and Savant has used all their tools to CC these two Blue Squad members. And so with that in mind, Optimal Esports Infinity, they lose the flash heal off Blue Caboose, but they get to safety.
Yeah, that's big for Blue Caboose and Robin not dying there despite the heavy engagement. We're going to have to look at top lane, though. Pata going in hard.
Yeah, they are yanked back a little bit by the chains, and now Izzo is in a bit of trouble too. Mystic Cat has already flashed, trying to get the kill bot side of the map, but this time, I don't know if it's necessary for them to use it. Izzo gets hit by the Rupture, still manages to get out from under the Ignite, as Tim is going to hand off the aggro, trying to get down on top of the Kayn, dies from over the wall, and now Yoshimina is also in trouble. The clone going to get past that Rupture. Tim dives under the tower, takes one shot, but gets the kill.
Yeah, that's called you showed bot lane and didn't respect the invade. Kinda hard to give any props to Mystiken and Yoshiminer when you're not trying to track the enemy jungler. Tim was in the red buff jungle there, trying to steal it away. As soon as he saw that Izzo was being engaged upon, he went right down there.
And now Vortex Ninja's in trouble because Savant was pulled up towards that mid lane. Robin is going to hit a dredge line in return, manages to just barely get out, but get out they do. And that's without even using their flash. They just burn glows there in order to kite this out. And so what that means is OEI still have not given up a kill. They're up a surprising amount of gold, and now that might turn into more as Pride Stalker NA gets sniped with a beautiful spear shot. Mystic Ken trying to follow up. Nice W forward, gets a temporary stun. Tim forced into the alcove at barely any health. Pata has to flash away, though. He can no longer tank for the Wukong, and so it's up to the Monkey Man to try to just evade aggro. But unfortunately, walking over a ward, they know where they're going, and that shutdown means that will be some amount of gold flowing back over to the Kayn.
Yeah, really unfortunate there for Tim. I thought he had enough time there to get the execute, but guess didn't quite have the timer right. Will pay for it with a few hundred gold going over to Mystiken, who at 1-1 at even on camps isn't, super far ahead, but it does keep the Kayn relevant. And as Kayn, that's the worst fear, is falling behind and becoming completely irrelevant to the game.
And the problem is the Kayn has already kind of gone down that long, winding path towards obscurity because Aulz, that disastrous gank bot side of the map, burned their flash. They're not going to have that up for a substantial amount of time yet. And then they really have not been able to access their farm on tempo with what Tim is doing. And so this Wukong is always going to have kind of first movers advantage. And given that a lot of the advantages we were hoping to see out of the Kayn earlier were coming from stuff like invades and from rapid ganks, their utility is just already really tamped down upon.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that you said you wanted to see from him was positively affecting this top lane. You wanted to see the Kayn helping Pridestalker NA get ahead in this lane. Well, Pot is significantly up in XP. He's significantly up in farm. He's got a huge push advantage. He has tempo advantage here. He's got everything he could ever want. So mission failed hard for Mr. Ken in the early game.
Certainly is unfortunate. And, you know, I think that Yoshi Miner was doing a really good job versus Izzo in that laning phase, landing a lot of really good ruptures, taking the Syndra low. But when you actually look at how the lane has fared, that's a Syndra with 2 assists. That's a little bit of gold from there. And it isn't like there's a huge summoner spell disparity between the two. As Yoshi Miner, they were really pressuring for a kill off the back of Mr. Ken's gank. So they used their flash, they used their ignite. Now that's back up, but still Izzo is going to have that summoner spell, that flash return to them first, and they will be able to play safely once again. And they're doing a good job from behind. They're getting themselves substantial CS. And in fact, actually, they're in the lead versus the Cho'Gath right now on that front.
Yeah, it's only about a wave, so it's not the biggest lead in the world, but it's the start of a trend that will continue to get worse, as you pointed out here, especially with the small leads that they've taken. And topside's going to continue to get worse as well for the side of Happy to Be Here, so this bot lane has to really find their footing. And they're currently 15 CS down too. Nothing is going right at the start of this game.
And look at this, Pantheon is rotating over to the mid lane just to try to hover and make sure that Optimal Esports Infinity get this first dragon under their belt. He can just kind of ult forward to make sure that this is actually more disastrous than it could be for Happy to Be Here. But in fact, this gank mid may be doing enough. Yoshi Miner, less than 100 health. Spear Shot's going to be back up eventually. There it is, just the poke Q version. It's enough to take down the big Cho. Pridestalker NA, already less than half health, trying to push in, has the World Ender available, and I'm not really sure what the Aatrox was thinking.
He was thinking, I've seen Aatroxes do this before when they have 2 items and a 4-kill lead. I can do it here. Problem is, you were 0-1. You were down 15 CS. You have a Caulfield's Warhammer. You do not have any of the resources necessary to take that play yet. Give it a bit. Give it 10 minutes, and then maybe you can start trying to be that aggressive. But right now, calm down, let this game build, and maybe you can slowly take back advantages instead of throwing yourself into OEI's waiting arms.
Right now, this is looking like a very rough start to the game for Happy to Be Here, and it's going to take a lot of willpower, a lot of really good calls to get them back into this. Right now, they're down, not necessarily 3,000 gold, maybe 2,500. Blue Cup boost there. That's the disengaged power of the Renata Glass, by the way. And now Tim finds purchase with the Cyclone. Savon left all alone. There's the second charge of the knockup. And yeah, full-on clean-up power. This Wukong, so strong right now, Aulz, and I really don't know what Happy to Be Here can do.
They can ban it game 2.
Sure.
That's
certainly.
about it. Really.
Yeah, this
Tim
game 1
just,
is looking about over.
He's everywhere right now. 5-1-1 at 8.5 minutes. Like, how crazy do you have to be as a jungler? How cracked do you have to be to stay even in farm, to have, what is that, 85% KP, 7 miss 1, and to have positively affected every single lane heavily in your favor? The Syndra has 4 assists. She's huge already. The Pantheon, 2-0-1, can just abuse Pridestalker at will here. And even the Sivir, only 0-0-2, but has a 20 CS lead, has 2 plates under their belt, is slowly gaining ground here as well. Mr. Ken has, he's gotten a kill. That's it.
That's the 1 kill on the map for them. Unfortunately, that shutdown came a little bit too early because now Tim is just able to get a bounty once again. Looks absolutely unstoppable. And Kayn, unfortunately, can no longer use that mobility that we always harp on to go for something like deep invades, because you know that 1v1 is going all in favor of the Wukong every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if he could, the fact that the lanes are winning so hard for OEI means that they're able to get deep vision. I've seen wards pretty much where we see that ward in the top chickens opening right there. That ward has pretty much existed since the start of the game. Every time it dies, either Izzo or Pata or Tim will roam in and get that ward again. It means that they are constantly visually tracking Mr. Ken. There's no chance for him to pull anything sneaky. They are going to start fighting over this Herald, though.
Yeah, they can't do anything sneaky by moving through that bot choke point, but they could use the Tribush to their advantage and maybe try to get into the pit. Nice rotation there from Izzo. That's going to dissuade Mr. Ken from going for something like a steal. Therefore, they just back off. That's Shelly picked up and actually put into the inventory of Pata.
I guess really wanting to push the tempo of this top lane even further. Have a 20 CS lead on the Aatrox. Have a couple of plates down already. Nope, no plates down, I'm sorry. But looking to change that. They do have Tim hovering here, so this will be a 2v2 when they discover each other.
Ooh, unfortunate for Mr. Ken. Just going to get face checked. That was a really good play off that vision pocket. And now with the Cyclone and Pata also wrapping around the corner with the flash. That's a dead Kane. An unfortunate scenario. Happy to be here. Will no longer be able to defend against a possible drop to the Rift Herald in the next few minutes.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what the top side of OEI is doing here as Izzo's getting engaged on hard.
Really good play by Savon right back. I mean, this Nautilus needed to roam. You pointed this out earlier during the draft phase, Aulz, and it definitely is coming true. Now, this might be a dicey one down bot. Robin and company just trying to go for a dive. I like the utilization of the hostile takeover there to interrupt the Moonlight Vigil, but Vortex Ninja knows how to play safe when their support is roaming. They will succeed in being able to hold off Blue Squad for the time being. But Blue Caboose flashing forward, getting a really good handshake, and this time around, they will not be able to survive. And Blue Caboose even has the heal to get Robin out alive as Mr. Ken cheats down there, looking for a pick back.
Yeah, that's just a good pick by Blue Caboose. Knows his numbers, knows his distances, just barely lands that flash handshake, able to pull Vortex Ninja in after a fight under turret that seemed a little bit ill-advised. Robin took a couple of turret shots, Vortex Ninja kind of winning the health trade. They had Mr. Ken coming down, so it looked like that could have been an angle for Happy to be here. Just a good, solid outplay by a support there.
And now, Happy to be here really have kind of lost all options. Sure, Savon made a really good play there in the mid lane. Maybe Yoshi Miner will just become a big unstoppable tank that Optimal Esports Infinity have to use a lot of resources to take down. But resources they have, and I think they will continue to have, especially because they now have the luxury of focusing on the Cho'Gath, right? You usually are told not to target the tanks, but here, who is doing damage on Happy to be here's side? Everybody's just so far behind.
Goodbye, Pride Stalker. It was nice knowing you.
Oh, and Pata might actually just be able to go for the 2v1 here. Mr. Ken being taken low. Although Pata, you could say the same for them. Savon rotating up. There we go. The Pantheon taken below 100 health and finally shut down. Successfully secured by the Kane.
Yeah, the downside is this is more gold going into the Kane. Kane from behind is not particularly good. Kane from behind is not particularly effective. It's going to take a lot more resources to get him back to parity with Tim, who's so accelerated in this game. I wish there was a better gold target there.
I mean, the thing is that Mr. Ken is the most fed member of Red Squad right now, but they're still 1,000 gold behind Tim at this point in time. They're only now about to come into parity with Pata. Actually, they're still 200 gold behind them. So, yeah, it's a way back, and I think that, honestly, getting Mr. Ken fed is about your best choice because nobody else on the map is getting any amount of realistic income to make me say, yeah, they can be a carry, but, I mean, Mr. Ken's going to have a miracle fight before I could confidently say that they could take it to virtually anybody on OEI's side, especially in a 1v1 or a teamfight scenario.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the game is just in such a miserable spot. It's 14 minutes. We just had turret plates fall off, and the gold lead is nearly 7,000. That's unheard of in League of Legends these days.
Yeah, I mean, all the comeback mechanics, and unfortunately Happy to be here, just not really able to access a lot of them. They've gotten a few good shutdowns under their belt, but the big 300 gold bounty on Tim still exists. And look topside of the map. Pata, even after getting ganked once, does not care. Knows that every single time they die, they're at least getting a kill back. And as they continue to snowball, it might turn into even more. And now here's Yoshi Miner, the one member of the team that I had some hope for on Blue Squad side. They're taken down early. And now, Happy to be here, just have to rotate back. Savon and Mr. Ken tried to defend the Void Monster. They cannot do it. And man, this Nautilus has to be careful because even under the turret, we've seen the power of Blue Caboose and company to go for picks. Vortex Ninja was taken down in a very similar situation earlier.
Yeah, this is very dangerous. Good rotations from OEI, looking a lot cleaner here, able to pick up a mid turret as well. I mean, this looks like a team that's re-energized, refocused, and really wants to change their image here, fight their way back up, and if they keep playing like this, they definitely have a shot.
And I'm not saying happy to be here or out of this series, but Aulz, if this is their actual power level being displayed here in what is kind of like a replay versus their series in OEL, I think that this might just be another 3-0. That 5